Welcome to the Doctors of Change, the podcast for practitioners, doctors, and healers who refuse to quit. This is where we honor the men and women who have walked through burnout, trauma, breakdowns, and breakthroughs, came out stronger on the other side. These are for the doctors who realized the greatest medicine they could ever practice was healing themselves first. Their stories, their lessons, scars, and victories will change you, inspire you, and wake up the leader within you. This is a new era of medicine, and the revolution starts here. Welcome to the Doctors of Change. Welcome back to another episode of Doctors of Change. I am super honored to share with you the founder of Psychable, Jemie Sae Koo, and she is going to give us some relevant information on some of the biggest changes in healthcare, from ibogaine clinics to psychedelics to the infusion of how these things are shaping the way healing, remembering, and transformation is happening. So this is a person that has had their own journey, that has found a resource of God, a channel to heal herself and to be on process to help serve other people. So I'm really honored to introduce Jemie, and please share a little bit about how your journey began into what is one of the most up and coming topics in transformation possibilities in all of healthcare today.
Thank you for having me, JR, and it's truly an honor to be here. This path began for me not in a moment of clarity, but in a moment of complete collapse. I had spent about 3 decades navigating depression, autoimmune issues, intense burnout. I was on various SSRIs, antidepressants, every fad diet supplement, you name it under the sun. I tried it. Nothing worked for me. And so, interestingly, outwardly, I was thriving, by societal metrics of success. I was working in executive leadership roles in the corporate environment and also various startups. But internally, my life was completely unraveling. And this was around, I would say, 10 years ago. I had manifested these mysterious symptoms where glops my hair came out. I was waking up in the middle of the night in puddles of sweat. I developed brain fog where I couldn't have even a normal conversation. And, I had ran all of these tests. I've seen all these doctors and everything checked out normal. And, the turning point came for me when I was yet at another doctor's office. And I remember sitting there, waiting for the answers and once again being told that, everything looked normal. So needless to say, I was feeling like I was running out of hope. And I finally found a doctor who was definitely more on the functional side, was willing to go beyond the surface. She ordered a very comprehensive lab panel, far more extensive than I've ever had before. And I remember standing in line early in the morning, fasting, tired, really anxious. They drew vials of my blood. It was like 30 vials of blood. I nearly passed out. I walked out of the lab completely pale. I was super shaky. I felt really depleted, not just physically, but just emotionally. And so when I returned for the results, I remember this doctor, she looked at me with this sort of like triumphant energy, almost like she won by finding a diagnosis. And she literally was like, "You have Hashimoto's." And she's there buzzing with all this excitement, like she solved this mystery. But it was on the receiving end of it, I felt like I was just punched in the gut, and I felt like it was like this death sentence that was given to me. And, I think the part that really broke me the most was that, she was telling me how this is something you cannot heal from. This is something you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life and be dependent on medication. And, she said it so nonchalantly, but to me, again, it just was like, this just feels like a death sentence, right? And so her words definitely sent me into the spiral. And, it was like just feeling a lot of hopelessness, a lot of grief. And I really couldn't see my way out of this. And so, that moment really marked me and was really impactful, and was the beginning of what felt like just like complete darkness and like being thrust into the abyss. And so, as painful and as dark as that moment was and that period of life was for me, that breakdown became the catalyst for everything that came after. And that was a moment where I remember just connecting back with that internal voice within me and saying I don't believe her. I don't believe this.
You rejected the diagnosis.
I did. And it was a moment where I, even as frail as I felt, was a moment where I reclaimed my power. And so by turning inward, I just started doing my own research, not just looking at these physical symptoms, but like what's happening from an emotional level, what was the unprocessed trauma that was storing in my body, all the ways that I learned to override my intuition in order to survive, what I can only describe as divine timing. This is where I was at a point where I was also completely isolating myself. My own family didn't even really know what I was going through. I would say, and I've hit rock bottom several times in my life, but this was rock bottom. Out of the blue, in a week's time, I had two people in different parts of my life call me, and both entrepreneurs who I highly respected. And in those separate conversations, both of them mentioned how plant medicine, specifically ayahuasca, was incredibly transformative for them. And I had a lot of preconceived notions, especially growing up with a father who was an alcoholic. He had his own chaotic relationship with the substance. And also because of the trauma that I had not only witnessed, but was on the receiving end of growing up with addiction in my family, something in me knew that this is something I need to pay attention to. And I really am so grateful that I consider myself spiritual. I pay attention to signs. And so as I jumped into this rabbit hole to unearth everything I could about plant medicine, ayahuasca, psychedelics, I came to this moment where it was very confronting. I realized I was sitting with a lot of fear. And I asked myself what was really informing the fear was the fear of the unknown, and it was the fear of death. And then I asked myself, well, at this rate, you're quickly running out of hope. So what is there to lose? And what is on the other side of fear? And the word freedom came through. And so 2 days later, I jumped on a flight to Costa Rica and I experienced the medicine for 4 days. And it not only lifted me out of my depression for the first time in my life, it gave me this renewed sense of purpose that in everything that I do is to be in service to humanity for the highest source. So that first plant medicine experience didn't necessarily fix me. I was still, dealing with the autoimmune issues, but what it did do was give me this opportunity to reconnect with myself again, to be like, oh, there you are. And it helped me realize that what I thought was just stress was actually trauma that was living deep within my nervous system. That constant pushing and achieving was just quietly suffocating my spirit and putting my soul out of complete alignment. And so, the one thing I was avoiding, the slowing down and actually listening, going within myself, was the very thing that brought me back into alignment and saved my life. So now it's either I'm guiding folks through a plant medicine journey or supporting them with, healing through microdosing. My approach is, really at the end of the day, how we can create a foundation of safety, intentionality, spiritual alignment, and helping the individual come back home to themselves.
Yeah, Jemie, thank you so much for sharing that. I've been in process, most of my life, but in the psychedelic world for 7 years. And as I continue to be in process and make progress, I've found 3 truths for me that have had the biggest impact. And you've mentioned a couple of them. Is I feel there's a few things that typically hold people back until they're ready to step into these. And the opposite, which is the things that provide the freedom, the longevity, the connected relationships. So the things that hold people back are fear, whether, like you said, it's fear of the unknown, fear of death, like you mentioned. And I think there's a lot of people. I work with other doctors that have patients dying of cancer. That's their biggest fear in their mind. And how do we get them to overcome that fear? And that is an openness. Their mind's like, well, should I do the chemo? Well, that's against God. What about the Bible? All but they're dying, their body's degenerating, but they're still stuck in fear to doing something a little bit different in this alternative space, listening to, and again, I'm not saying go do it. I'm saying you went within and like, there was something here. There was a sign internally telling you, you've heard about the ayahuasca. You had two signs. Look at this. So the openness, and then, on the other side of fear is also courage. But what I've also found is honesty.
Mhm.
Is, when we're lying to ourselves, when we're out of alignment, that dishonesty to others, to self, is it holds us in a state of stuck. So if we can get people to be courageous, truthful, and open, transformation continues in process. So what are some, before we jump into some of the solutions that I know you've provided resources behind, what is your navigation in those three words or those three lenses that you've had to go through or break through to continue to have the impact and overcome the health challenges that you had?
Yeah. I think what immediately comes up for me in reflecting what you just said is the way we're designed, right? Like our brain and our nervous system is always seeking the familiar, even when it no longer serves us. We're just looking for evidence of something that we already know. And so, so much is oftentimes really, first of all, slowing down and noticing that, like, I'm gravitating to the familiar, but it actually is not serving me. So, how can I then now be in a state of readiness and willingness to shift out of that? That's something where I see where psychedelics and plant medicine can really help us begin that shift, and creating that window, to bring in new ways of being, new ways of doing, and really want to double down on this aspect of readiness and willingness. You have to be ready and you have to be willing to make the change in your life. Otherwise, you just feel like you're in this, like, stuck in this washing machine loop. And so, I think the three things you hit on, the other word that really encapsulates it for me is integrity. How do we continue to show up in integrity, not only with ourselves, but with this work and with those that we are serving?
Yeah. So for some of you that may be in those patterns, these are good signs. Am I solving this problem? Am I continuing to have this challenge with my wife, with my work, these feelings about my work? There's something there to pay attention to. And again, like you talked with truth and integrity, am I living my highest purpose? Am I in my highest alignment? Am I embodying what I am offering the world and inviting them in my clinics? Am I, showing up as a good partner? Am I showing up as a husband? Am I showing up as a leader in my clinic? And it's not to shame you, these are just awareness signs. And then knowing, just like you said, that you have the power to not believe what somebody told you. You have the power to change. You have the power, the potential to take your power back, to be the navigator of your life versus held hostage by whatever you may feel is holding you back. And I think a lot of people have to go through these process in the remembering is overcoming fear, remembering that they do have a say and a choice. And sometimes you need the guide. Sometimes you need other people in your community that are like, they're finding the courage to do these things and transform and change. And observing that and seeing that can really lead to confidence. Like, they can do it, I can too. So, the communities that I've been in have really supported me to take those courageous steps when it can be scary.
Yeah, it's super scary. For me, my prayer, my intention that I set for myself every morning, every day is, God, use me for your highest service. Just use me for your highest service. And I just listen. Yes, I have my checklist and things like that, but it's so important that we are so intentional about how we are showing up day in and day out every single moment. And I love that you touched on the word embodiment, right? As much as we are there to show up for our clients and our patients, it's so important as practitioners that we're embodying these things and really living it, being that model. Especially, like, a perfect example is when you're a parent, right? Like, what is the best way to teach your children is to model this for them, right? Is to share what this looks like with them. And, being a mother myself, it's a very relevant metaphor. And fundamentally, what is the values that we're standing for, right? The
Values.
values is what really informs our work. And two things that come through is standing for our freedom and standing for our sovereignty.
Yes, those are big. I don't like rules. If you were a rebel child like me growing up, is I
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
quite accept other people's rules or conditions. But when I look at values, respect, love, kindness, the things that are of high good, in my opinion, that's where, everything shifted for me. No different than, taking care of your body, that self-love component. That's that embodiment, like, okay, that is good for me. I wouldn't want somebody to tell me what I have to do, but I can look in the mirror and the truth of like taking care of myself, loving myself, speaking good words. That's the embodiment of these values that put health at the platform. So we know when we're not in alignment with that. And again, no shame, just like, but can I choose a little bit differently if I'm aware and conscious of these choices? And I can be in process and I can reclaim that this value is really important to me.
Yeah, and it's a constant work on that muscle, you know? It's never ending. You don't just reach the destination. We're always working that muscle. And one metaphor I like to bring in is like, I grew up going to church, right? If I wasn't in school, I was in church. And so, that along the line of the embodiment piece, it's like you can go to church, you can go to your Sunday service, you get this beautiful sermon delivered, you receive it, and you get in your car, you're driving off the church parking lot, somebody cuts you off, and then you lose it.
Mm.
And so are we actually embodying what we got from the
Yes,
service,
yes.
right? But can we slow down for a moment? Can we catch our breath, breathe deep from our belly and be like, okay, in this moment, I have a choice. I have a choice in how I react. I have a choice in how I embody what it is that I am ushering in my life, how I want to show up, who I am and how I want to move in this world. So,
I love that you said something really powerful, and I want to go to some of the teachings and the magic that you bring to help people to reclaim their power. Is in my second journey of ayahuasca, I went really deep after the first one, and I recognized I was not my thoughts, everything that was there. So to be separate from them and recognize that I was either programmed or got a software based on my parents, my generation, my environment, because I was so cerebral, I was in healthcare, so science driven. I had to learn to be like, what is this heart thing versus this
mhm.
programming that went there? And to separate myself from that and to make some of these conscious decisions and choice and be like, is that my belief? Was that my parents? Was that there? That little pause in that separation was very important on my second journey versus just the safety, the fear, and the thoughts that may or may have not been mine. And then on my fourth journey, I got really, really humbled on that second one and my fourth journey with ayahuasca. And on that fourth journey, I came to the same place, Jamie, is just like I knew I was out of alignment in many ways, and not shaming it. Is just it's like God came and said, with the opened up information that was available to me, is like, you're out of alignment and I love you. And I just said, because it was so depth, so painful, same words that you said, God just used me for good. I know I want to help people. I know I want to introduce it. And it's like, no, time to help yourself and your family. But yes, you are doing good and you will continue to serve for good. And that's still my motto. So I love to hear that from somebody is just, God, use me for my greatest good. Let my skills be of impact to the world. I'm here to serve. No place to get to. And I love that we're aligned in that capacity. And what I know you've created is helping people resource themselves. Meaning, one of my friends, Dr. Sachin Patel, says, you are the doctor of the future. So we can give our patients the power back. We can help our loved ones take their power back. And what I used to teach is medical fitness, lifestyle medicine. I think we all know exercise, eat better, move, but you've created the 12 foundational lifestyles. And I would like to get to some of those principles that maybe are a little bit different than our doctors are taught throughout their time in medicine to really reclaim themselves so they can, be exactly how they'd love to be.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up. I just to kind of finish one thought around this idea of depression, which is something that I had to battle for 3 decades. The first ayahuasca experience really showed me was for me, depression was a misalignment with one's soul. So sit with that one because that was really clear, potent message for me of like, wow, how much I deviated from what was really in alignment with my soul versus appeasing, my parents, church, community, society, and a lot of the work that had to really, first of all, a lot of death and dying, shedding, deconditioning and understanding what narratives were actually mine and what was my truth versus what's not mine. That really helped me return back to who I am and to be in more alignment with my soul, my purpose, what it is that I came here to do,
Yeah.
to be of service.
In that relearning aspect, if you were in healthcare, we're probably going to say you're depressed, you're diabetic, you're X, Y, and Z, these identities versus that you rejected. It's like, I have a symptom. I'm out of alignment. I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling, angry that whatever, or frustrated. That is, again, out of alignment with your calling, with your soul, with your purpose. And, you can take steps to move, to feel, to connect, to get back closer to your center. And that's what we're going to talk about now is some of these foundational principles that you can go do a journey. That doesn't change your life. It may change your perception and recognize there's more than what you know, but it's the work after, the process, the getting to the gym, the breathing, the taking the space, the making choices, the not reacting, the listening to good music versus listening to things. So many things that show up every moment of every day to reclaim your power. And nobody's going to be perfect. It's just stacking some wins.
Yeah. Yeah, and we say, the integration is the 90% and the medicine is really the 10%. The insight of what the medicine brings us is truly profound. It's powerful. It's incredibly transformative and impactful, but it's the practice, as you said, that transforms our life. And that's why we created the microdosing method that goes far beyond just dosing protocols. We designed it to support the body's innate ability to heal itself through what we call the 12 foundational lifestyle principles. And that really is a holistic framework for creating sustainable well-being in today's oftentimes dysregulated world, right? And so this program that we developed isn't just about having these aha moments. It's really about giving the individual the tools, the structure, and support to bring those insights into their day-to-day lives, the moment-to-moment decision-making choices in a more real and embodied way. And, I think this came out of a real need of just seeing there was just so much like, okay, I came off of this amazing experience, but what do I do with all of this? And seeing a lot of what we call like spiritual bypassing. It's like, oh, you did all these things and you're not really living it out, or life kind of just settles back in and you're not necessarily doing or behaving the way that feels in integrity with yourself. So, most effective integration practices that we work with are, one is nutrition as medicine, right? Food can be medicine, but it can also be harmful for us. So what we eat, as you know, shapes our gut health, our mood, our focus, our ability to self-regulate. And so oftentimes in our program, we are teaching people how to eat clean, anti-inflammatory approach that really helps support the digestion, our energy level, and help with our nervous system. And then secondarily, it's clean air and clean water. And it may be like such a simple concept, but the quality of what we breathe, the quality of the water that we're drinking has such a profound impact on our vitality, right? So healing begins with these basic things. And then thirdly, detoxification and parasite cleansing, which I still feel like it's such an underdiscussed topic, and it's truly an epidemic. We're living in a very toxic filled world with heavy metals, parasites, chemicals. And so we resource the individuals in our program protocols that help reduce that burden so the body can start to return back to balance. And fourthly, big emphasis on optimizing our breath. And breath is one of the most potent and powerful, accessible ways we can begin to regulate our nervous system, to begin to bring ourselves back to a place of centeredness and calmness, to release trauma, to reconnect with that inner child, and to continue to expand our awareness. And so oftentimes, we have techniques where even in 5 minutes time can bring someone into a psychedelic light experience. So the breath it's our birthright. And so this is about reclaiming that birthright and understanding really how powerful and divine we all are. The other one, the fifth one, is about community and reducing our stress and really understanding that healing, it doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in connection. Healing happens in community, and how we have to be so discerning of who we choose to surround ourselves with, who we choose to share our energy, who we choose to serve, which also, speaks to, reducing that stress aspect in our life and in our work. So those are, I would say, kind of the five top aspects. Certainly can go into more, but I would say one of the other key principles is around energy. How do we optimize on our energy? And underneath that is microdosing, but microdosing in a very safe, intentional, spiritually aligned way. And we understand that microdosing, is often understood as kind of a quick fix, just like plant medicine. They think like, oh, you just one and done and a standalone thing to do, but it's not, right? And so this is why we've created this 12 foundational lifestyle principle framework to be able to now offer folks a more comprehensive integrative approach that is addressing the root cause and not just, symptom management.
So what I love about your program, Jemie, is much of what you said is not uncommon for these doctors, especially the most of my audience is into regenerative or functional medicine. But regenerative health isn't just the stem cells or the PRP. Functional medicine isn't just the supplements or the BHRT. Detoxing at the foundation is part of lifestyle, whether you're doing with the EBU technology or certain herbs or, glutathione, strengthen your cells, saunas, you name it. All these are amazing. But a container of 12 months, are you embodying it like we talked about? Are you showing up in it? Just like I go to the gym regularly, doing it now with my family, which makes it easier for me to show up in the kids. So like strategies around all of these different things. And we all may need a little bit more support in one of these areas. No different than when I was running the MedFit company. All of them would come to our conferences and believe in there. And it's just like, well, we believe in exercise and nutrition, but are you doing it?
Exactly.
Are you living it? Are you having solutions for your clients, your community? And most of them, if we're being honest again, believe in it, maybe are halfway embodying it, but they do not have the solutions. They do not either have a JR, a health coach, or a Jemie, or a portal, or something, or a community that gets people in, and that is what you have built. So the microdosing method is begin to have the potential of rewiring your brain, of taking that subtle pause. Maybe you aren't ready for that big expanded journey, but this is a safe way that I would say is not much different than a nootropic of any kind or a supplement of any kind, whether it's good for your cells or your brain or your body to begin. That is in relationship to you if this is a new topic to you. And then get in and look from a lifestyle perspective. Make these changes that you're creating more neuroplasticity for your brain to your body to change new habits, new behaviors, new practice, as we talked about in a well-designed curriculum. Even when I came on this call today, I am no tech genius, but Jemie quickly sees and how to deliver a world customized experience to your patients, to you, to your wife, to your father, your grandparents, to come into this environment and experience and have that extra pause and space with some of this microdosing method. I love it. When I seen the curriculum behind the pause, I was just like, you have gone deep with this through your experience, and it is really good. That's why I support it. I recommend you work with Jemie and get into this program for yourself, for your family, because going to Peru, I'm not saying didn't change my life. It did, but the who you're working with, the how, the science, This to me is probably the safest, easiest, natural step one to begin their relationship here. And just like you said, if you do not learn how to light breathe before you go do some of these, you may have fear pop up. And it's like, oh my goodness, that's not for me. You just didn't train or build the foundations that could potentially allow you to trust, surrender, not have fear pop up. And if fear pops up, that's okay too. But then you have somebody to talk to or integrate. That's normal. I was scared my first 10, 15, 20 journeys. Now I understand the science. I understand the letting go and just allowing it to work. This is a process. And if you don't have the right guides, the right change, the right support and community, you may say, I tried this. And that's what I love most about you said. This is not a one and done. Church isn't go once and now I have it for life. The gym isn't go once and now I have it for life. If you got chronic pain, it's rarely one PRP and you're healed for life. This is a process. I am in process. I am relearning. I am remembering. I am in community and stepping up every quarter to continue to get to new levels. As we talked before this call, Jemie, I continue to step into the things that I was courageous, like cold plunges or mushrooms. Like I beat that fear. Then it was fear around money or stepping into my highest alignment, not traveling and being on the road, being like, I want to be home fully unless I choose to go speak at an event or something right there. So I'm in process, and this is quite the community for you to learn how to be in process.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, JR. Yeah, and just want to emphasize this. We've been very intentional on creating the safest path to doing this work. We have collaboration with non-denominational churches, which enacts and provides federal protection under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993. So if you're thinking about like, oh, is this legal and all that, we have created this literally the safest path to it. You become a free church member. You can donate to the church. You can receive the sacraments, and it's all organic, third-party tested for mycotoxins and heavy metals because this is medicine. And so what we also been very intentional about is how do we bridge the world and bring in and blend in the neuroscience with the indigenous wisdom, really honoring the indigenous communities that brought forth this path for us to reconnect with, quite frankly, and rediscover. And just, to your point, microdosing is just one of the safest, most gentlest path on so many levels with the gut-brain connection, enhancing that neuroplasticity, having that anti-inflammatory effect, and just really helping our brain and our nervous system become more adaptive, more responsive, rather, being stuck in this like reactive state.
I love it. So I always say, if you're curious and this is calling to you, this is, again, the place that I would recommend my family, my loved ones, where to begin. Then the great thing about the company that Jemie founded, Psychable, if you're ready for those expansive journeys, she has a connected guides of people that have came, done the work, and now have gone through, just like herself, of psychedelic facilitation. She is also one of the forefronts in iboga specialists and facilitators. That's the big buzzword that you've seen in Texas and beyond, as well as legal psychedelic centers or through a church and facilitation. She's at the forefront of this. But what you have is a directory. So if somebody is ready hearing this and like, I want to go a little bit deeper than microdosing, which is subperceptual, you're likely to not feel or go into any of that journey space, going to be much like a supplement. I don't want to say anything that may or may not be true for super sensitive people. But what I'm saying is expanded journeys. That's where some real transformation potential opens up when you step outside of your normal brain thinking and doing. Tell us a little bit about how you've resourced these people and connected them and how you're guiding people that are ready in your community to go to, vetted facilities and practitioners.
So we have a beautiful suite of offerings, as JR has alluded to and touched on, is we have the directory of psychedelic assisted practitioners on psychable.com. We also have hundreds of articles that have been written by subject matter experts that have been medically reviewed so that you can make the most informed decision for yourself. And when you feel ready, we have a group program called the microdosing method. We have doctors, we have nurses, medical professionals, frontline responders, veterans, executives within our program. So you get that community aspect of it. And you also have this access to our portal, which brings in that full protocol of the 12 foundational lifestyle principles. But this is what I want to mention. This isn't about doing everything all at once and living perfectly. As JR said, I am in process. We all are in our process. So it's about just starting with one thing, right? Gaining capacity, all of a sudden feeling more energetic. And then now you have this more expanded space of bring in another tool and continue to build from that. So after our program, we provide what's called a 12-month integration container called the Psychable Wisdom Circle. And this is where we begin to deepen the work, and through community, through mentorship, through, being in a peer group, having continual guidance from leaders across modern science, neuroscience, indigenous, some of the most renowned practitioners that are in breath, in body work, energy, and much more. What I will say is, whether I'm working with like a CEO that's navigating burnout, or, a doctor that's recovering from, their addiction, or, helping someone recover from trauma in like a clinical setting, the philosophy is the same. Integration isn't just you doing something after the medicine. It's a way of living. It's a way of being. It's what we call embodiment. And it's ultimately about returning to a life where your body, mind, soul, and spirit are in alignment. And that is where we see lasting embodied change that not only becomes possible, but just becomes part of who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Jemie. What I want everybody to know is I often hear when I'm out speaking or sharing my story of transformation, I've tried that, and it either was pleasant or it was recreational or it wasn't a great experience. And often when it wasn't a great experience, I'm like, tell me more. They did it with friends. They did it at a party. They did it not in a held container, not with the trained facilitator, not designed to go inwards. That's a completely different experience. And that's sometimes what I feel gets a bad rap out there, as opposed to doing it with intention, the highest good, a purpose, with the right intake. And what are the goals, the desires, the gaps, the friction points that may come up? What are your past experiences? This is what Jemie and her facilitators and her community is dedicated their life. This is now part of their calling because of what it's done for them, what it's done for me. This is a pure calling. However, I'm helped to help doctors and practitioners just like you take your power back so you can go in your community and help other people. So I believe the microdosing method is a wonderful place to start. The directory, if you're trying to go somebody. And again, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's your wife. Jemie has a program coming up for mothers, and she's in the Miami area if you're curious about that. She has a program for elderly that are liking the spaces and how to integrate. And again, the thing that I love, my biggest and first journeys were, other than in Costa Rica, I did a solo, was with the Huni Kun. Some of the most highly sought after integrity. They bring peace, joy, love, and a different energy to these ceremonies. Some of it's like they want you to go to the basement, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's deep healing. But if I were to, again, have a family member ever begin their journey there, it would be along those lines based on what I've experienced. So all I can do is know what I've done and try to point people based on their desires, what feels safe, what I know is good. And she's so well resourced. And I hope you click the links below. I hope you come and join in and see me share about being the CEO of your own life and the wisdom circle that I get to share in the new year. And this is a community of intention, of embodiment, and well-resourced on giving you the practical step-by-step community resources and support you need to really know, are you out of your alignment? Are you knowing there's more called for you? And I invite you to join us. Jemie, what would you say to somebody that is on the fence? They have a little bit of fear. They've heard it maybe against their religion, or they haven't seen the science. I know you recommended your website may have some articles. I know the show on Netflix opened a lot of the doctors that I work with is like, I read it, I seen something. If you're curious, how do you begin this search finding? Give us some resources, give us some next steps for people to consider.
I would say, first of all, really just get quiet with yourself, drop out of your head, connect back with your heart, take a deep breath, and just even ask yourself, is this something that is calling me? Is this something that I'm curious in? Is this something that I'm interested in? And if I am, then I would say start educating yourself. Psychable.com is a great resource. We will meet you where you're at. We have a ton of information there. Do research. You can see tier 1 institutions coming out with so much studies that are really speaking to the power of this work and the transformation that takes place. And just know that, it's not a one and done thing. And it's also one of the safest things you can do. We have, if you're not sure where to start, this is why we have our offerings. We work with licensed naturopathic physicians who will come on, do a consultation with you. I will personally do a consultation with you. We'll do a full-on intake. We're going to look at your history. We're going to look at all your medications. We make sure that you are vetted and ready and safe and sound in mind, body, soul, spirit to be able to do this work.
It's not for everybody.
It is not for everyone. And again, if you feel called, this truly has been the safest path that we have curated specifically for folks like yourself. If you are feeling even, remotely ready or just interested, we are here to receive you and we're here to meet you where you're at.
Well, thank you, Jemie, for the work that you're doing on yourself in this community and for your energy today sharing with our community, the Doctors of Change. What that really means is you're willing to go inwards and resource yourself, just as we talked today, so you can show up in embodiment, because that energy, that truth gives people permission and the opening to make changes themselves. So thank you so much. It's an honor, and I can't wait for this message to meet a lot of people.
Thank you so much, JR.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Doctors of Change. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or expanded of what you believe is possible, share it with another doctor or a leader who's ready to rise. Together, we amplify this movement, and together we transform healthcare, community, and the future of all humanity. Until next time, heal yourself, lead with love, and keep becoming the doctor of change you were born to be.